How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm an avid herpetologist, and with the pre-release this past weekend and official release coming this following weekend, it is finally time. We are entering into the BT15 format of the Digimon TCG. It has never been a better time to be a Machinedramon player. We are getting some really cool cards in this new set that honestly are powerful enough that the entire deck practically restructures to accommodate these new cards. Obviously, as we go through the deck list, we'll be talking about each of those cards individually, but Supreme Connection is, of course, going to be the big poster child. There's quite a bit to be talking about with Supreme Connection, and we will get to that card once we reach that section of the deck list. Now, there are going to be some notable omissions that some people may not be happy with me about. For instance, we are not, unfortunately, going to be playing any copies of Marvin. I did take the time to pick up an alternate art because I think Marvin's artwork is absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately he just doesn't really fit into the list that I'm going to be showing you guys today. This is not a Sons of Chaos list. This list is kind of going to be a hybrid of my experiences playing with red base as well as black base. We have a ton of draw and dig power, but we're also, of course, on a black base, so we're still going to have the benefits of being able to keep things in our raising area, protect our stacks, and all of the resiliency and consistency options that come alongside that. Now, we do have quite a bit that we need to be talking about with today's video, so let's not waste any more time. With that preamble out of the way, let's go ahead and get into it right now. Alright, let's go ahead and get into our deck profile, of course starting with our eggs. Now, I'm finally off of Hagurumon and Hotmon for our eggs in black base. We're actually going to be running 4 copies of the brand new egg from BT15, Kyokyomon. Now, Kyokyomon has an opponent's turn effect. Once per turn, if a Digimon becomes unsuspended, draw a card. Now, in the Machinedramon archetype specifically, there are, of course, plenty of ways for us to get this to activate, some that we have control over, some that we do not. This is going to activate whether it's our or our opponent's Digimon that are unsuspending. So, if we have a Digimon with Reboot, we get to draw. If they have Digimon that are suspended when we push forward with this, on their turn, we get to draw. If they have effects that unsuspend their Digimon outside of the unsuspend phase, things like Hagurumon promo, Bloomlordmon, Fenrirlugamon, this will activate in those circumstances as well. So this provides us a pretty consistent draw engine, one that we actually do have a reasonable amount of control over, especially with some of the other cards that the deck is now able to run. And let's go ahead and get into one of the most important ones. Starting off with our rookies, we are getting to play 4 copies of the brand new BT15 Hagurumon. This new Hagurumon is 3 to play, has 1000 DP, has an on-play to look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You can add a machine or cyborg Digimon from among them and a black tamer to your hand, then the rest go to the bottom, and it has a very nice generic Reboot Inheritable. Now, this Reboot Inheritable is one of the primary reasons I do think Kyokyomon becomes a very viable egg in Machinedramon, because now we're going to be able to have level 4s and 5s that also have Reboot, not just our level 6s. Now, Hagurumon is also redundancy. It's a card that finally supplements EX1 Hagurumon, which we have needed for quite a long time, and one of the big benefits this Hagurumon has over EX1 is you do not have to discard anything from your hand. It's just straight card advantage. So if you don't want to be discarding your cards, you want to hold them up, whether it's for Analogman, for Digivolving purposes, you don't have to get rid of anything. You just get to straight up look at the top 3 cards, and Machinedramon has wanted an effect like that for a very long time. So very, very happy to have this new Hagurumon. It is a welcome addition, and as I mentioned, it will be supplementing 3 copies of EX1 Hagurumon. Same one we've been running for a while. On play, trash a Digimon with Machine or Cyborg trait in your hand to draw 2 cards. It's simple, it's basic, but it is also very easy to churn through your deck with lots of effects like these that add up over time. Now, these are actually going to be the only 7 rookies I'm playing in this list. I'm very light on my level 3s and 4s this time around. As I mentioned, I am taking some inspiration from my red experiences, just because we don't really need stack building as our primary game plan anymore. It's a fantastic secondary plan, or I guess an alternative game plan, but we do not have to fully rely on our raising area the way that classic black bases do. So both of our rookies being able to get hard played, give us free advantage, that's what kind of the direction that we want to be moving in. And it just so happens that all of the Digimon we are playing are machines or cyborgs, so if you do happen to hard play Hagurumon, any Digimon in your hand is free game, so you'll be able to do that. Now, as we move into our champions, again, we are pretty light. We're only playing 5. We're going to be playing 2 copies of the new promo Raremon. Talked a little bit about this in my red base list. Raremon is 4 to play, 4000 DP. It is 3 to Digivolve, which is a little expensive, but it is always treated as a cyborg trait. He's got an on-play when Digivolving effect to trash a card in your hand to draw 2. Any card, mind you, so whatever you want to pitch, you can. And has a when attacking inheritable by trashing 1 card in your hand, delete an opposing level 3 Digimon. Now that inheritable does come up. It's great for board control, especially early and mid-game. But Raremon is another card where he functions just fine out of raising, but he also functions great if you want to hard play him. He's very cheap, being only 4 memory, and honestly, if you do happen to push up a rookie and you want to save yourself a little memory and get a little extra advantage out of him, Digivolving for 3 onto a rookie, getting a draw, and still getting to discard a card and draw another 2 cards is a pretty decent amount of advantage that I'm always happy to engage with as well. So Raremon is honestly a pretty cool card. I'm really glad I was able to find a good spot for him in my list, and I think 2 copies has been just about right for him. And finally, we do have 3 of our debatably more important champion level Digimon, and that is going to be 3 copies of HoverEspimon. HoverEspimon, I think his utility just keeps going up the more sets get released. His immunity to deletion effects is of course fantastic, but his on-play when Digivolving effect is very impactful as well. Being able to look at the opposing security, basically it gives you the opportunity to see if what is in the top of their security is safe for HoverEspi to swing into. So let's say for instance we have an egg in our raising area and we have Hagurumon on top of it. This is a great turn 1 play, and ideally we want to be doing some kind of other setup play, setting up a Tamer, playing Supreme Connection, whatever the case is. We want to keep our Hagurumon in our raising area. On our next turn, we're going to promote, and ideally we go into HoverEspimon. HoverEspimon is going to look at the top of their security. If that card is safe, if it is below 5,000 DP, that basically tells us we have a free security check with our HoverEspimon. So we can swing in, get that check. Then on the opponent's turn, we go ahead and reboot right away and get a free draw off of Kyokyomon Egg. And if we have a Tamer, or if our opponent has a Tamer in play, now we also have this awesome little blocker that can't be deleted by card effects to probably draw us even more cards on future turns. So yeah, in summation, I think HoverEspimon in combination with Hagurumon and Kyokyomon is a really great card advantage package that gives this deck some really awesome early game aggression if you can, check and control your opponent's security, get really cheap evolutions, and then continue your setup plays. So I am only going to be playing 3 HoverEspi and 2 Raremon in our champion slots. Again, we are going light on those levels just because we want to be saving space for other cards in the list. But yeah, if I may end up bumping HoverEspimon up to 4. I've been liking him at 3, but I don't know. We'll see how well that synergy works out, and maybe we'll change that in the future. Alright, let's go ahead and move on up into our level 5s. Of course, we are playing our EX1 trio here. We have Andromon, MetalTyrannomon, and MetalMamemon. Any list that is really able to Digivolve, I do strongly suggest you at least be playing 1 copy of each of these. They all still share that when Digivolving effect. Check your top 3 cards, add a level 6 machine to your hand, and trash the rest. And then, of course, they each have their inheritables, where Andromon gives blocker, MetalTyrannomon gives reboot, and MetalMamemon lets you pop a play cost 5 or less on attack, which has gotten even better in this new format because there's another inheritable that pairs really well with MetalMame, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Now, we are still going to be supplementing our 3 inheritables here with 3 complementary inheritables. We have another blocker in the form of EX4 MetalGreymon, has blocker while in play, and irrelevant when Digivolving ability, and does have blocker as the inheritable. Now that we can play our level 5s for even cheaper, I do think MetalGreymon's utility has also gone up, since you can now drop him for only 4, which is super great. And speaking of playing our sideboards for cheaper, our new reboot inheritable is going to be BT15 Gigadramon. So Gigadramon is 6 to play, 6,000 DP, has an on-play to reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, and at any 2 level 6 or higher cards from among them to your hand, return the rest to the bottom of the deck. Once again, this does have a secondary effect, an end of turn, that synergizes with the Dark Master archetype, which we are not playing, so don't worry about that. And again, it does have generic reboot as the inheritable. Gigadramon is actually a really interesting card. Since we can play him for only 3 memory onto an empty board with Supreme Connection, the ability to look at our top 4 and hopefully find level 6s that we want to be following him up with is really cool. It basically gives us the opportunity to play Chaosdramon for only 7 memory if we hard play him first, which is not nothing. I mean, that's definitely really strong synergy. So I'm going to be opting for my second reboot inheritable to be Gigadramon. And for our other removal option, we do have BT9 Megadramon still. Megadramon is still one of few cards in the game that still has pretty consistent Tamer removal while also being able to out small Digimon bodies, so I'm still going to be playing my single copy of Megadramon. There are still plenty of 3-cost Tamers and new ones entering the format, so yeah, 1 copy of Megadramon there. Now, the only 2 of in our Cyborg lineup is still going to be, of course, BT8 MetalGreymon. Attacking Unsuspended Digimon is still one of the best inheritables in the entire game, so we are definitely still going to be wanting to play our 2 copies there. He still has that really relevant when Digivolving effect, which is fantastic to follow up on top of an immune HoverEspimon. So, yeah, so MetalGreymon is still going to be our one and only 2 of in the Cyborg lineup. Moving on to our buffs, we are still playing a copy of BT1 MetalGreymon. This is still going to have that really nice generic plus 3000 DP inheritable, which is still the best that we're able to get in Machinedramon. So we are still playing our single copy there. And we are still playing a single copy of Gigadramon from BT6. Going to be that buff on the opponent's turn. In effect, I have definitely come to respect more and more as the formats have gone by, especially now that EX1 Machinedramon has kind of become the centerpiece of the deck again. We want to make sure that we are able to buff him to at least 13,000, which is going to be a lot more frustrating to get through than 11. That in combination with the ties that we are also running is going to make our level 6 machines absolute walls. Very difficult to out for our opponent, hopefully. So yeah, we are still going to be playing our single copy there. Next up is going to be another new card. We are going to be having a single copy of BT15 Megadramon. Megadramon is the card that I mentioned pairs really well with MetalMame, and we'll talk about that in a moment. It has an on-play and when Digivolving effect, which is obviously going to be nice to see. Hopefully we get more cyborgs like that in the future. Reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. From among them, you're going to put a Machine, Cyborg, or Sons of Chaos trait card among them into the Digivolution sources of this card, and add another such card to your hand, and then the third one gets trashed. Now, he does have a when attacking effect if you are opting to play Marvin in your list, which I mentioned I unfortunately am not, but if he does have a Sons of Chaos Tamer in his sources, on attack he can also mimic the BT9 Megadramon effect to pop a 3-cost or less Tamer or Digimon, which is fantastic. Love to see that. He also has an inheritable when attacking once per turn, D-Digivolve 1 on one of your opponent's Digimon. Now, this is really, really powerful. We've had access to a D-Digivolve inheritable before in the form of Cyberdramon from EX2, but this is completely generic. We don't have to have Tamers in play necessarily. We want them, but we don't need them in order to get access to this. He's very, very powerful. And this D-Digivolve effect, as I mentioned, pairs extremely well with MetalMamemon these days because with the growing popularity of various ACE cards, if your opponent has a level 6 in play and an ACE card in the level 5 slot underneath it, you can D-Digivolve it and then immediately pop it with MetalMamemon to not only gain your 3 memory, but out the entire stack just with that removal effect. That's really, really strong. So this is a card you can probably run, honestly, 2 of comfortably. I'm still only opting for 1, but again, that is subject to change. Maybe I do change that around as the format progresses, but we'll see how the meta shapes out once the restriction list hits in March, because I'm honestly not sure what to expect from the meta after that point. Now we are going to go on to our security shredding effects. Starting us off, we are playing our copy of MetalGreymon from the structure deck. This card is still just as good as it was before. It's got generic blocker while in play, security attack +1, generic inheritable, only 3 to Digivolve, pretty much all stats that we want to be seeing. He's still excellent and definitely going to be keeping that single copy. And we are playing a single copy of Megadramon from EX1. This Megadramon has always kind of been pretty good. 7 to play, 7,000 DP, the ability to pop 2 of your opponent's 3,000 DP or less Digimon on play with that security +1 inheritable. But I think he also is another one of those cards that really benefits from Supreme Connection. We can now play him for only 4 and still get the benefit of popping 2 of our opponent's bodies for that cost. So if you were not already running him in a previous list, I definitely think it's time to bring him back. I think his utility has gone way up now that you don't have to pass 7 memory if you want to hard play him. Finally, for our security effects, we do have our single copy of MetalTyrannomon from BT11. Still has that on-play when Digivolving effect, which again, a little bit better now that you can play him for a little cheaper, though 5 is still going to be a fairly hefty cost. And of course, his all turns effect to trash opposing security anytime you delete something in battle once per turn. That's still going to be very vital against certain lists, especially now with things like security control getting some new tools. You want to be able to get rid of security without having to check it, and MetalTyrannomon is our method of doing that. This, again, is a card you can potentially run it too. I'm opting to run a single copy just to keep my inheritables diverse, but, you know, your list can look however you would like it. No 2 Machinedramon lists are going to look the same, of course. Finally, our last 2 cyborgs, we are going to be playing a total of 16. We are playing still a single copy of BT7 MetalGreymon. 7 to play, but if you have a Tamer in play when you bring him out, he is going to gain you 2 memory back, making him essentially 5 to play. And with Supreme Connection, you can actually drop him for only 2 memory. He also has that really nice inheritable where if you delete something on your turn, you can gain a memory. MetalGreymon and the last cyborg, which is actually going to be MetalGreymon ACE, have picked up, again, vast levels of utility thanks to Supreme Connection. These cards basically let us play out of our hand onto empty boards for practically no memory at all. MetalGreymon ACE being able to come out for only 1, and MetalGreymon BT7 coming out for only 2. That gives us freedom to digivolve into our Chaosdramon, netting us only a 5 or 6 memory Chaos, again on an empty board, which is not something we have had access to up until this point. MetalGreymon ACE's removal does still come in handy every once in a while, so again, keep that in mind, but also please bear in mind that it does still have that overflow effect, so if you tuck MetalGreymon ACE into a source and detach it for a level 6 effect, you will still have to pay the overflow and give your opponent 3 memory. So play him cautiously, but he is absolutely worth a spot. Give him a try. Alright, we're going to go ahead and move up into our level 6s, starting us off with 3 copies of EX1 Machinedramon. Now, another notable omission you're going to notice is I am not playing any copies of BT11 Machinedramon anymore. I honestly was never a huge fan of BT11 Machinedramon, even in past formats. Obviously, the Mill 5 was always super helpful, and the combo was great when you could get it off, but I always felt like it was just a lot of setup for something that a lot of decks can very easily play around. But I'm incredibly happy that this deck is finally pivoting back and making EX1 Machinedramon the star of the show again. Supreme Connection coupled with Machinedramon gives us one of the strongest power plays that this archetype has ever had access to. We can now play Machinedramon for 12 memory, gain 5 back for tucking our sources, making him 7, and play him for 3 less, basically meaning that all totaled, with Machinedramon being played from our hand, it only costs us 4 memory, which is wild. Being able to hard play essentially an ace with a Megazord level threat attached to it is pretty fantastic. Supreme Connection has very much revitalized the utility that this Machinedramon has. You should not, in my opinion, be playing less than 3, especially if you are playing for Supreme Connection, which, in my opinion, you should. It is, again, a card that this deck is practically able to rotate around. So yeah, 3 copies, no less, of Machinedramon, but we are still going to be playing 4 copies of our Chaosdramons. The big reason that we are still playing 4 Chaos and 3 Machinedra is Machinedra, of course, is fantastic blitzing in from our hand, but Chaosdramon does still have the utility of being able to not only be able to digivolve onto our stacks, it can still digivolve onto a Machinedramon, which basically just means that you can follow a Machinedramon up with a Chaosdramon on the following turn, or if you need to play, your cyborgs out from your hand or Evo and Raising, Chaosdramon is still, of course, the better option there. So we are going to be playing him just because he kind of pulls double duty with the hard play and the digivolve game plans. And he is still, of course, going to be the ultimately scariest threat, being able to still de-digivolve 3 on our opponent's Digimon. And going right alongside, right hand in hand with our Chaosdramon, of course, we still have our 2 copies of Chaosdramon X-Antibody. Chaosdramon X still being the pinnacle boss monster this deck is currently able to establish. There are quite a few decks in the meta where if you have the perfect setup of Machinedramon, Chaosdramon, and Chaosdramon X on top, some decks just straight up can't deal with that. You are extremely resilient to a lot of the Digivolve effects, you're immune to DP reduction, you have deletion, bouncing, and tucking protection, so Chaosdramon X is just still such a fantastically scary card. I'm still going to be playing him at 2, I think more than that gets a little clunky, so 3, 4, and 2 is going to be the ratio that I'm running in my level 6 slots. And now, of course, moving on to our Tamers, we have still got, of course, our 4 copies of Analogman. Analogman is going to be the ever-important piece of the Machinedramon archetype, where he gives our level 6s the chance to blockade multiple attackers in the same turn. He is, of course, still going to be lots of useful digging, lots of memory gain. Analogman, in my opinion, should always be a 4 of. But I'm also supplementing him with 2 copies of Memory Setter Tai from the new Structure deck. Now, this Tai I talked about in my red base list, and he has honestly just been overperforming every single time I see him. Being a memory setter is always valuable, but his all turns effect, where anytime an attack target is switched, you can suspend this Tamer to draw a card and buff any of your Digimon by 2000 DP. It comes up so frequently. It's fantastic with HoverEspimon. It, of course, makes our level 6s nigh insurmountable. Aside from a few specific decks, it can get absurd amounts of DP. We can get, our Machinedramons, our Chaosdramons up to 13, 15, 17,000 DP. It's pretty crazy to look at, it's pretty crazy to think about, and does make this deck significantly scarier while also digging us deeper to see more of our pieces. And now the time has finally come, we need to talk about the new star of the Machinedramon show, our 4 copies of Supreme Connection. Oh my goodness, guys, is there a lot to talk about here. So Supreme Connection is a 3-to-play option card. The first effect reveals the top 5 cards of your deck. From among them, you're going to add 1 card with the Machine or Cyborg trait to your hand, trash another of them, then the rest go back to the top of your deck, and you place this card in the battle area. Despite all of that, it also has an incredible delay effect. that lets you play a level 5 or higher Digimon with the Machine or Cyborg trait from your hand, with the cost reduced by 3. So this, as I mentioned, is the card that kind of lets this deck really get its teeth back in the modern era. So Supreme Connection is basically straight up replacing any of our needs for memory boosts or training cards. Both of those have had very significant problems over the last couple of formats, and Supreme Connection solves so many of those problems seamlessly. First of all, obviously, Black Memory Boost is going to be taking us 4 cards deep, which is great. However, it is also going to only be able to grab Digimon, and specifically Black Digimon, which means our red level 5s we are going to have to bottom deck. It also means that we cannot grab our Tamers, and those, again, are going to be sent to the bottom of our deck, which is not where we want to see them. Now, gaining 2 memory generically is, of course, a great ability. You know, a lot of decks have run memory boosts for a reason, but in Machinedramon, there's just been a lot of downsides that this deck has not liked about it. Training cards helped a little bit in the sense that now we can finally grab our Tamers at least, but we only check half the cards, and we still can't grab our level 5 red cards. Now, Supreme Connection has completely flipped those downsides around. Not only are we able to add and trash any of our Machine or Cyborgs, grabbing our rookies, our champions, level 5s, level 6s, but it also, of course, grabs a second resource since we're also trashing a card. So we're getting a 2-for-1 out of this card already. And instead of sending the cards to the bottom, we rearrange cards back on the top of our deck. And that is a very important distinction to make. So basically, we no longer have to be bottom decking our Tamers when we see them. Setting up the top of our deck not only means that we are not bottom decking our Tamers anymore, it also means you can set up your follow-up plays. So let's say that you know that we grabbed a rookie off the top of our deck, we have a champion also in the pile that we can then leave on top. We Digivolve our rookie in Raising, we draw the level 4, Digivolve the level 4, draw the next card. It basically just lets us chain our plays together super, super well. Supreme Connection is such a fantastic card. There really isn't enough that we can say about it, but there is one other very important aspect of Supreme Connection that I have kind of been dancing around, its security effect. Unlike memory boosts and training cards, where the security effect is basically just putting it into the battle area, which isn't bad, it's still memory resources on the next turn, Supreme Connection activates its entire effect. You are still revealing the top 5, you're still getting to add and trash a card, you're still putting the rest of the cards on top of the deck, and you still get to put Supreme Connection in your battle area. In my personal opinion, that makes Supreme Connection one of the single scariest security checks your opponent can possibly hit. If your opponent checks Supreme Connection and isn't killing you on that turn, you've basically guaranteed some insane crackback that is going to happen on the follow-up turn. There are going to be a lot of situations where they check Supreme Connection, you are going to add an EX1 Machinedramon, and you're going to see an attack of the heavy mobile Digimon, which you can leave on top of your deck to be drawn on the next turn, immediately setting up a 4-cost Blitz Machinedramon that they can't do anything about, again, unless they specifically kill you. It's really crazy that they gave Supreme Connection the same effect on its security ability. Like, that is, I think, extremely underrated, but I'm telling you guys, watch one game where this card gets checked in security and see what happens afterwards. This card can turn a brick hand into an absolute turnaround like that. It's crazy. It's fantastic. Do not play less than 4 copies of Supreme Connection. You need a full 4 copies, and it is totally worth it. Alright, finishing us up, we are, as mentioned, playing our 3 copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon. All of the things we mentioned about Supreme Connection still apply here. This card, again, gets significantly stronger thanks to our Supreme Connections. We can blitz in our EX1 Machinedramons for only 4, basically devastating our opponent's board state with all of our very valuable inheritables. It's just so good. I don't think this deck has ever been better positioned in the meta than it's going to be this coming format. All of these new support cards give this deck such powerful teeth, such powerful consistency. It basically solves a ton of the issues this deck has been having for basically the entirety of its lifespan. This deck is a deck that has, of course, been kind of slowly drip-fed little bits of support here and there, but BT15 is definitely the single best set for Machinedramon. We have gotten some of the biggest quality of life updates ever. So I'm super excited for the coming format. I do hope that you guys are excited for the format as well. I do hope you guys have enjoyed this list. I still honestly think one of the biggest barriers to entry for Machinedramon is the deck building process. This deck is still extremely not solved. As I mentioned, there are going to be lists that are going to be playing Sons of Chaos packages with, cards like Marvin, who pairs really well with like the Doraemon Egg and Dorumon rookies. Now we have Wingdramon that can play him out while also de-digivolving things. Like, there's just so many ways to build Machinedramon. experiment. That's my biggest recommendation. If you guys are interested in Machinedramon, give this list a try, but also experiment with your own ideas as well. There's really no set way to be playing this deck, and yeah, that is going to be the scariest part of getting into it, is just learning how to properly build it, learning how to pilot it effectively. There are a lot of decisions that need to be made, but ultimately, I do think that this deck has one of the highest returns on investment, where if you do take the time to get good with this, it will absolutely perform for you. So that's going to about do it for my BT15 Machinedramon list. I want to thank you all again for joining me. If you did enjoy this list, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out. We're trying to reach that 1,000 sub goal. We're getting there, guys, slowly but surely. I do also want to hear from you guys. I actually have a Discord link in all of my videos that takes you into my Discord, where we are constantly discussing Machinedramon, as well as other aspects of the Digimon TCG and other TCGs in general. So feel free to hop in and chat with us. We'd love to hear your ideas for your own personal list. And with that, that's going to about do it. Again, I'm an avid herpetologist. I do hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.